How's it going, everybody? It's 4 o'clock, and today what I'm talking about is back-friendly training. You might want to take notes, especially if you're going to have questions at the end. It'll be easier for you because there's a few things that I'm going to be going through related to what process you should be going through, what things you should be training on, that sort of stuff, and dispelling some of the myths around back pain and stuff. So we'll wait another 30 seconds or so. The other thing you can do is you can post your questions in the chat. I'll try and I'm doing this right off my phone here, so hopefully I'll be able to see those after, or what I'll do is I'll run through them after, and I can answer any questions you just leave on the text feed. This is also for people that are viewing it after the fact. If you have questions, you can leave them through the chat or direct message me through my Instagram at Skilled Body Fitness or at Greg Lothian. And you can also catch me on Facebook. Same too, at Greg Lothian, Greg Lothian or Skilled Body Fitness. So it's 4 o'clock on a Sunday, so I'm gonna get going right away. Now, what I really want to bring across is dispelling some of the big myths around what's happening with back pain and how to just train your back. So a little bit of background from me. In 2003, I injured my back fairly significantly, and I managed, so my disc was actually pushed out so far that it was pushing my spinal cord out the other side of my back. And typically when you have, if you have disc pain, or if you've had pain like that before, usually it goes whatever side the disc is out on, that's where you get all your symptoms. Mine was actually, the disc was out on my right side, and it was pushing my spinal cord out on the left, and it was pushing it out so bad that it was giving me all my symptoms on the left-hand side. Now, I rehabbed that, retrained myself, returned to a season of rugby and full-time firefighting and training and doing everything that I want to do. I did without surgery, and I trained without pain. I'm also almost 50. So for those of you that are, thinking that it's an age thing that's creeping up and it becomes normal, the back pain thing becomes normal over time, it doesn't. It's not a normal thing to have. Although the statistics themselves are overwhelming. 4 out of 5 people will have a major back event at some point in their lives. That's a crazy statistic. And it's even crazier when you see it from my side and you understand what is actually going on and why most of the people have back pain. It's completely unnecessary, and I'll explain to you how to go from, especially if you're in pain now, how to go from the pain that you're in now to training and getting yourself to the point where you're training pain-free and able to seriously train, not just do like little physio exercises and say that that's helping your back. Because the other myth there is, you go for therapy, and I changed my practice many years ago. People would come in 1 or 2 sessions to see if give them a couple of little exercises and make the back pain go away. Reality is I might be able to make your pain diminish for the time being, but it doesn't correct what's actually happening. So there is a staged process that I go through that I've created over the years that works very well. And what I really want you to get from this today is, if you're going to go through getting yourself to back-friendly training and you're in pain now, the process that you have to go through to be able to get yourself from where you are today to training and doing all the activities you love to do without any pain. So if you are planning on going to seek therapy, to go to some sort of clinician or whatever, this will give you some ammunition for the questions you should be asking and the process you should be looking for. So the process I start with is, there's, when we look on a timeline from, injured to high performance training, there's a bunch of steps along the way. And there's, I'll just give you a brief synopsis of that. If we look at a timeline like this, this is high performance training, let's call it. And this is like severely injured, incapacitated, can't do anything. Along this timeline, this is where you're seeking therapy, doing corrections, paying for out of, typically people go to their insurance to try and solve what's going on here to reduce their pain. And at a given point, it stops being viable to pay for therapy. You're starting to feel really good. And what you've essentially done is you've diminished the pain here. So this is the real therapy zone. The other end here, this is where fitness, even basic fitness, starts. And so we go from, just starting to train to all the way to Olympic level high performance training or human performance training, whatever you want to call it. There is a massive gap in between. And what I'm going to talk about today is the steps that you need to take to get from, I'll talk a little bit about this as well, but then the steps you need to, you might still be in pain here. This is typically, people are about 80% better at this point here. They're not 100% better. Or even worse, they've sought a whole bunch of different therapies and they're just not getting better. Well, if you're not getting better from the tissue healing, so this is really like the zone, the therapy zone is one of the best things I ever learned in school was a teacher said to us right at the beginning of the year, I was in our, the first assessment and rehab course I had. This is going back 23 years ago. And he said to us, you're not healers. You don't have any special powers. What you're doing is you're creating a conducive environment for healing. When you're going through this process right here, the injury healing. So creating a really good environment for the body to learn to go through the process to heal tissue. This is what we're doing here. Now, unfortunately, what's happening in the system today is people get to this point, or maybe you're even stuck with a little bit more pain than that, and you feel like this system is failing you, or it's just not working, or it's not viable to pay for it anymore, and you really desperately want to get back to training and living an active everyday lifestyle. So you do the things that you feel you need to do, core training and all this other stuff. It's a complete myth that, you just strengthen your core, everything will resolve itself. Typically what happens is you're maybe doing even early fitness training, but if you are here on the timeline or you are somewhere in here on the timeline, what's going to happen is you're just going to get injured and you're going to get kicked back to you. Okay, so I'm going to go through the process now of what I do. So we do, definitely you have to have an internal look at the structure, everything that's happening here in the therapy world. You should be looking at the internal structure, especially if you have severe pain or very persistent, you get it 5 times a year or whatever. It's an ongoing theme with you. Have a look at the structure, get an MRI, get x-rays, figure out what's going on, do as much tissue healing as you can. The next phase, and it happens somewhere in here, there can be a little bit of an overlap, is somebody has to have a global look at your imbalances and start to correct your imbalances. So those imbalances might be all kinds of different things. A muscle is firing too much on one side of your body and maybe not firing on the other side of your body. This is something that was going on with me just recently. I had a colleague assess me because every time I really opened up sprinting, my hamstrings were sensitive. I could feel like right on the verge of really pulling my hamstring every time I went to run. And it was because my glutes weren't firing on time, and they were lagging behind, so that my hamstrings were overloaded. Well, this can happen in your back. This, you move slightly, and some things aren't firing, and things aren't stable enough because one side of your body is tighter or stronger. Somebody needs to take a step back and do a postural analysis in two fashions. One, standing still. One of the things they found early on, this is many years ago, when cashiers were working with a cash in front of them and a conveyor belt beside them, and they would punch in things and then move things to the side, punch in things, move things to the side, and that industry became this this forum for back pain. And when they started looking at these people's posture, it turned out that they were standing turned like this, where the pelvis was facing forward and their body was turned this way, because they spent such an enormous amount of time turning like this. Well, this is just a simple imbalance. The simple imbalance is creating all kinds of problems, and they can show up in your ankles, knees, hips, but typically they show up in your back. So just a static posture. Somebody should be looking at your static posture, standing there. And then the thing that is becoming more popular now, but can be difficult to find, my cousin, who was just south of Edmonton, was asking me to help her out because she had a tremendous amount of back pain, and we managed to find her an athletic therapist that did this process, had a look at her static posture, but then also had a look at her moving posture. So if you're squatting or lifting or pushing things or pulling things like, when you're in pain and you're in the early phases of these things, of the problem, sometimes it's hard to imagine being able to, move, squat, lift, and do all these things. But once you get to that 80%, somebody should be looking at those movements, even without, maybe, you don't have to have an Olympic bar on your back to do a squat. Just have a basic look at your squat and find out what's going on. If there's imbalances there. So, we have a look at imbalances, and this is where typically we give like one-sided exercises. So if you're at the point where somebody's looked at you and you're getting these one-sided weird sort of exercises, these are corrective exercises for imbalances or for the next phase that I'll talk about. Okay, so that's phase one. Somebody needs to be looking at your imbalances in your static posture and your moving posture. Stage two is essentially body control. So stage one here, stage two, here. How much control you have over your body. So now when we look at movements that you should be doing, and I'll talk about which movements you should be working towards. But let's say squatting. When you look at squatting, instead of just looking for imbalances, we look at how much control you actually have, especially for back-friendly training, how much control you have of your low back. There's, when I first got injured, it became my obsession actually to figure out what was going on, why it was happening, what had led to it. I had done years and years of martial arts without some sort of correction, somebody showing me how to control what was going on at my hips and low back. And I was just going to aggressive training all the time. And it turned out I really wasn't controlling what was going on with my lower back. So I was putting my discs in a position to slowly over time wear out until my disc pushed out hard enough that, I really lost it. So, and I had, like many of you, precursors to that years before, where, I was on the floor for a couple of days. I remember once actually, I think it was 20 or something like that, getting frozen on the staircase. And it only lasted, half a day or something like that. So I just, like everyone else, I just fluffed it off. Well, if you know somebody that's, getting a few of these little indicators, it's time to jump on it now, because it's much easier to correct what's going on and gain control of what's going on with your body the earlier you do it. So the thing that I teach people here is what's called blind postural awareness. It's one thing to learn a therapy exercise. Like one of the things you need to learn is that, you know, your back, there is a neutral position, an ideal position for it to be in. So if you lean forward or you squat under something to lift it up, you know how to hold that position. One of the problems is, you know, in the therapy world, one of the problems can be they look at this. They might watch you do these things under no external resistance. So, you know, if I teach somebody how to move and have control of their back with no external resistance, that's one thing. But you need to progress this. This stage actually takes a little while. It takes a while to learn how to control what needs to go on with your back with any exercise you're doing. So that's including like pushing and pulling, pressing things up over your head, anything like that. You need to be aware enough to have control of what's going on in your lower back to make it back friendly. And so it starts by learning whatever movement you need to learn, whether it's a pushing movement. I'm not going to apply stress and force you to push something, because it's going to, all of your concentration is going to be going on to what you're pushing, not what's happening with your lower back. Until you have real control over what's going on with your lower back, okay, now we have control. I can start to add a little bit of resistance. And the thing that we pay attention to the most during this phase is having control of what's going on with the back as the resistance increases. So this is, there's actually two factors here. There's blind postural awareness. So having control of your back, and then under stress, or, you know, sometimes in the early phases of things, dissociation is another thing that you need to learn to have blind postural awareness. So dissociation is, are you able to control what's happening with your lower back without the rest of your back moving? Can you dissociate the lowest part of your back from the rest of your spine? Because there is a little bit of movement. You tilt your pelvis one way, tilt it the other way. You should be able to do these things without affecting the rest of your posture. Because if I'm going, you know, if every time I have to lean forward with my upper body, that my lower spine rounds as well, now I'm putting my discs at risk. So in this phase, learn blind postural awareness. So how to hold your, what position to hold your back in, and I will go through exactly what that position is in 2 seconds. And dissociation, so how to control your back without anything else being affected. When you train, back-friendly training starts with what your major focus should be. Your major focus needs to be on your back, no matter what exercise you're doing. So, and you need to, so I'll go through these two things. That this is sort of the plan moving forward. Is what you're trying to work towards is you should be able to squat. You should be able to lift things. That means bending at the hip to pull things up off the ground. You should be able to generally push things, pull things towards you. And these things, not necessarily light resistance. You need to work towards something functional, you know, like depending on what your lifestyle is and the things you want to be able to do. You might have to be able to work your way to a high level of resistance for these types of things. So there's squatting, lifting, pushing, pulling, then pressing things up over your head. And for those of you that have back pain, pressing something over your head with imbalances, like your lats are too tight for your body movement, they're really going to accentuate your back position and get you into this really uncomfortable, unstable position. So you need to learn how to push things up over your head and pull things down towards you, or pull yourself up for, you know, if whatever it is you're doing. So those are the 6 major skills, and those 6 skills are what you should be slowly building towards. Now, I say that it starts with, so when we talk about back-friendly training, what you need to know exactly what position your back should be in at all times, and then you need to practice this in multiple different positions. So the ideal position, you can try this as you're watching this, ideal position for your back is if you arch your back all the way, you stick your butt out and you have an arch in your back here all the way until you feel compression. That's too far, okay? But this is the position we start with. Arch your back until you feel compression. Then, and this requires dissociation because you don't want the rest of your body to move, you just want your pelvis to move. You want to tilt your pelvis back just to relieve the compression in your back. So I don't know if you can see that, it's a very small movement. So this is over compressed and that's flat. It's a tiny little movement. So you don't want to feel compression in your back all the time, but you don't want it to be rounded, because if it's rounded, this is where the discs are trying to push out, and over time the ring that holds your disc in your back is going to wear out. The good news is the ring in my back was completely worn out and disc came out very bad. It was like you can actually see an MRI hanging off. Even with an existing disc problem, you'll have to do some tissue healing like I did to help resolve what was going on. Part of my disc got pulled away, part of my disc got retracted back into where it was supposed to be. But once that happens, and this process isn't, you know, it's long-ish. If your disc is out, it's been out for a long time, you know, this might, you know, take a year or something like that to get yourself to that point. But certainly if you've had back pain for a year and you've been babying it, it's probably already happened. Now you just need to regain control of what's going on with your lower back, because even with an existing disc problem, if you can manage the position it's in, so arch your back until it's compressed and then back off just a little bit, you should be able to stack those discs nice and flat. And even with an existing problem, if you compress that, the disc won't come out because it's in the right position. And this was the reality with me. I could return to all of the activities I wanted to do without worrying about my disc coming out again, because even though I already had a tear in the disc and the center could come out, I obsessively worked on managing my posture. So, you know, there's three things that I teach. The first three things that I teach, I call the big three. One is neutral spine position, okay? The other two are super important as well, especially when we talk about back-friendly training and dissociation. These are things that I'm teaching in this phase here. So we've already tried to correct imbalances. We're actively working on correcting imbalances, and we work on neutral spine position under increasing stress. So once you learn it, oh yeah, I can really control this. Okay, now try and push something light and see if you can control that position. Have somebody watch you, do something like that. And then the other two things that I teach in my big three is, one is center of gravity. So the first thing is actually center of gravity. When you look at the foot, when you're training, no, call this the big toe, little toes. If we split up the weight distribution in the foot, it should be 60, 40. So this goes all the way to the beginning of your toes actually. And then your toes should be rested on the ground but with no weight in them, because they should be there to fire on and off to keep your balance, okay? Unless an exercise specifically has you on the balls of your feet, you want to split the weight 60% in your heels, 40% in your forefoot, and nothing on your toes. Just this correction alone will ease pressure on your back. If you concentrate on this, there's no exercise for this. I teach this and I get people to think about it and find that ideal position and practice it and practice it and practice it. when we go to do exercises, one of the things that makes, you know, the clients that I work with more coachable is understanding that even if I'm working with a small group of people and I see, you know, maybe don't look like you're doing that exercise right. If I just say, hey, watch your center of gravity, and amazing the amount of corrections that happen when somebody just centers what they feel in their feet. So that's number one of the big three. Number two is that neutral spine position. Number three is bracing. How do you hold, and you know, when we talk about core training and what core training actually is how do you hold a straight posture under stress? Okay, so if I am concentrated on my center of gravity in my feet, I am in my neutral spine position. Now, when a force is applied to me, I can, and you can start with a very little force. Like for example, if I had an elastic pulling this way, so if I'm standing like this and the elastic's pulling towards the wall, am I able to hold my upper body from twisting against that elastic? Or, you know, when the elastic is pulling, is my body all of a sudden all deviated? You need to correct your center of gravity, correct your neutral spine, and then learn how to position yourself so that you're as relaxed as possible and still able to hold that position. And then over time, we increase the stress and increase the stress. You shouldn't be holding yourself as tight as you can for a 3-pound elastic. You should be able to really just sort of relax and correct, get yourself into that position. And again, this is dissociation. So if you're talking to somebody about what type of training you should be doing, balances, dissociation training is the first thing, okay? The next phase here is building a foundation. You know, I call it building an athletic foundation because I believe all of us are inherently athletes to some degree, whether it's recreational or you know, high performance. This building a foundation is specifically building enough strength in all of the structures to support squatting, lifting, pushing, pulling, pressing overhead, and pulling down. When you talk to somebody about, you know, like, oh, I'm just going to get a personal trainer to, you know, increase the strength of my core. A waste of time, absolute waste of time if you have back pain. That's not a back-friendly way of looking at training. When you talk to a trainer, and there's more and more trainers, athletic therapists are really well versed in this type of stuff. But certainly there's a lot of kinesiologists that are really well versed in this, a lot of physios and people really in the active world that are trying to work on this, you know, these 3 stages here. Talk to them about, you know, correcting your imbalances, learning how to control your posture, blind postural awareness. So not having to look in a mirror to control your posture, because in the real world, you're not going to have a mirror around. Doesn't mean you can't use a mirror to start with, or a mirror in the gym setting, but definitely you need to turn this into something blind. Then the next phase is building a foundation for minimum those 6 activities. Then you need to talk to them about what it is you want to be able to do. Going to a trainer or going to a therapist, you know, somebody comes in to and is asking to work with me, just generally saying I want to be more fit is useless information. And you know, be wary of somebody who's taking you on with just very generic information like that, because it doesn't lead you to anywhere. And I know that, you know, if you're in a lot of back pain now, and it can be extremely frustrating because it can seem long and nobody can correct it and all of these things that are going on. But make sure that you're going through the right process. If you've been stuck with pain for a long period of time, it's probably because you're here and you need this. You need to go through this. You need to retrain your body how to move more relaxed. You need somebody to look at you and say, okay, the training we're going to do, are the right muscles firing at the right time? Okay, so beyond this, you know, when we talk about, you know, really you have a foundation, you should really continue to train the 6 skills, and then anything that is more specific to the sports activity lifestyle you have. Okay, and this stuff doesn't, you know, we're not talking about like cardio and all that sort of stuff, although, you know, depending on what type of cardio training you're doing, it may be impacted by your blind postural awareness and that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of information, but if you want to start back-friendly training, this is the process to go through, and these are the questions to ask the people that, you know, that you want to work with. You know, like I have a small practice. I don't take on a lot of people, but I like as much as possible to share any of the info that I have so that you can bring it somewhere else. Certainly you can connect with me if you want, you feel like, you know, that I'm the right person to look at it. But arming yourself with the right information, and then going and, you know, interviewing with people. Don't just sign up to any trainer because they seem like, you know, they've got ripped abs and they've big players on Instagram. Like that's not what's going to help you at this point. But believe in one thing: there are very few cases of back pain that cannot be corrected. There are definitely a few very specific types of anomalies in the back, things that can be created over time that create massive obstacles in getting pain-free. But, you know, even in the worst cases that I've seen, we've managed to set up as much tissue healing as possible. Now that, you know, if you're curious about the ones that are really very difficult to work with, anytime the actual structure itself, if you can't physically stack the spinal column up properly, because you have some sort of listhesis, something like that, which you would know because at this point you probably would have heard what you were, you know, if you had a stenosis or something like that, you would have heard that already. Those can be more difficult to deal with. But again, you need to have somebody with a clinical eye on this sort of stuff. Look at what's going on. Look at, you know, your X-rays, your MRIs, and your static posture, your moving posture, your dissociation, all of these things, to be able to formulate a plan. One of the things that when people work with me, they work with me for a year, and it doesn't that they have to sign up for a year if they want to work with me. And the reason I do that is because it can take some time to get to where you want to go. And even if we get to, you know, a couple of weeks or months into it and they're starting to feel really good, again, you don't want to just go flying off the handle here and train, you know, okay, I'm out of pain now and I can, you know, push myself really hard. If you're here and you're training, you know, things that are appropriate for somebody at this stage, again, you're just going to get kicked right back down. So you know, following that supervision, that staged sort of step, you know, that staged progress. Anyway, so that's my spiel about back-friendly training. You know, it's difficult to just say, okay, do these 3 exercises, although certainly if you have questions about, you know, what things you should be doing or who you should be talking to, you can put it in the chat and I'll you know, I can try and dive into it a little bit more. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unplug my mic so the sound will change a little bit. But then if anybody has questions, you'll be able to ask me those questions. Yeah. So Stuart, I don't know if you can hear me or if I can hear you.
Yeah, can you now?
Oh, there you are. Long time no see.
Yeah, how you doing?
Very good. Any questions?
From me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm watching partly for myself, but I'm also watching for my eldest son, who's very active, 30-year-old, and
Yeah.
yeah, he gets very regular back episodes, and yeah, I just
He was big in the tennis world too, eh?
yeah, he liked to play tennis. Yeah, he's a climber as well, and but he's a big guy too. You know, he's 6'2", and yeah, so he's very active. He's very physically active, but yeah, he does train a bit, but he's seeing a physio now about his back. But I'm hoping I'm going to get him to watch this. So
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, like, and my biggest thing about this video series, which I'll continue over the weeks, is to really just make sure people are following the right process. Taking this information to the physio he's working with and saying, okay, like, how do we get not just decrease my pain so I can go back for a few more weeks or a few more months without pain, but like really like solve the problem.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're willing to share it at least.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I still do a lot of training to stay in shape for tennis, and I can't say I've had a back episode since I worked with you years ago, which is
Awesome.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's every once in a while. I'm turning 60 in another month, so every once in a while the bones still creak a bit, but yeah, it's all a matter of consistency with the training for me.
Yeah, yeah, and for everyone too. Like for me as well. I know when I don't necessarily get back pain, but I'll get indicators that like maybe I've spent too much time doing design work on the computer or something like
Yeah.
that. You really just gotta consistency is huge. So that's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. I'll let you. I'll post this video up as soon as I can,
Okay.
and fire you the link so that you can share it along.
Great.
It would be really great if you know people that are in pain and really need the help to know what to do to get out of pain and back to an active lifestyle. Share this with them so that they can get the right information. One of the things about back pain that's really drives people crazy is there was actually a study done on this on what was worse, a high intense amount of pain or just a little bit of pain for long periods of time. And it turned out that your body doesn't actually record pain intensity. So you can, why women can go through childbirth multiple times. It's not because it's not phenomenally painful. It is, but your body doesn't tend to record it as much as it tends to record duration of pain. So something that is even just a little bit of pain, but is acting on you for days, weeks, months, years, can drive you absolutely insane. And it's unnecessary. Like I said at the beginning, 4 out of 5 people will have some sort of significant back pain. We're talking about North American stat. That's an astounding statistic, and it's completely unnecessary. So if you've had, the occasional thing on and off, then you can get rid of it. So. Well, thanks for joining, Stuart, and for everyone else out there that's viewing this post. Don't be shy to connect and write some comments and share it with as many people as possible so that they can get the right information at the right time.